It's MAGA Uncovered. It's episode 7. No, it's episode 8. Episode 8. Ron, you go away for like 2 minutes and suddenly everything gets confusing. Welcome back, Ron Filipkowski. He is my partner in crime, star of Twitter, and he is a kind of... What are you, Ron? I don't really know what you are. You're a Republican who switched when Trump came in, and now you still kind of hang out with the Republicans. Is that right?
Well, I wouldn't say I hang out with them. I go after them.
You go after. There we go. The exposing. That's
Family
what it's
feud,
all about.
right?
Yeah, the exposure. So that's what we aim to do here anyway. I'm Anthony Davis. Trump's made a couple of appearances in the last week. The rally in Iowa, the town hall on Fox where he went full fascist with Sean Hannity. I mean, there's a little smile on my face, and there shouldn't be, because, I mean, it is so dangerous what is happening now in this, as the law starts to catch up with Donald Trump. It is becoming more and more dangerous because his rhetoric is becoming more and more fascist. And that in itself is something that needs to concern everybody. He's literally prepared to bring the whole country down. The judiciary, the justice system, the FBI. He literally wants to crash everything just to maintain his innocence. And the crazy thing is, Ron, he's not innocent. The guy is guilty in every direction.
He's already shown that he's prepared to do that. Imagine what would have happened on January 6th if Pence had done what he wanted him to do. Imagine the chaos that would have resulted from that. Trump knew that full well, but he didn't care, because ultimately what he cares about is himself.
Do you think that we're getting to a situation now where any MAGA Republicans are going to recognize that Trump is getting more outrageous with his language, and just because, he was asked a question, I think Hannity asked him the question, what are you going to do about the economy? And his answer was that he's going to close the border. I mean, it's insane now. Like, there isn't any narrative. He's not even answering questions as he should. He's just saying the first thing that comes into his head. A MAGA Republicans or any Republican's going to be like, something, this guy is just not the full ticket.
Well, yes. I mean, another example is his question about that he was asked about Taiwan, where he was asked, if you're president, would you defend Taiwan if Japan threatened Taiwan? And he launched into a riff about chips, about computer chips. And didn't answer the question at all. One time when he was asked about why the war started in Ukraine, he went off on a tangent about windmills. Yeah. So he's clearly losing it. Yeah. And I have noticed that the number of defenders and how strongly they defend him is very slowly shrinking. It's not, and I've said this many times over the years, there's not going to be one thing that's going to cause the dam to break. It's a fraying of the carpet at the edge. It's a shrinking of the base very slowly.
Interesting. Let's first talk about the Michigan's Attorney General, who's filed felony charges yesterday against 16 Republicans who acted as fake electors for Trump in 2020, accusing them of submitting false certificates that confirm that they were legitimate electors despite Joe Biden's victory in the state. This is the AG, Dana Nessel. She announced on Tuesday that all 16 will face 8 criminal charges, including forgery and conspiracy to commit election forgery. Top charges carry 14 years in prison. I mean, this is, there's a British phrase that I've used before called banged to rights. A couple of people wrote to me and said, never heard that before. They are banged to rights, meaning that the evidence is completely against them. There's nothing they can really do here. I mean, you've even got video that you posted, which we'll show, of them knocking on the door saying, no, you don't want those electors. You want these.
There's so much here, and by the way, I will tell you that that wasn't their plan, was to bang on the door. Their original plan was to sneak into the Michigan State Capitol the night before, into like an attic or a closet or something, and sleep there or stay there overnight and hide in the Capitol, and then miraculously appear in the morning. But they were talked out of that. Probably by a state legislature who was one of their allies. Right. So they elected for this, trying to sneak in the side door. Incidentally, there was a legislator in Oregon who did let some people like this in the side door and was prosecuted for it back in 2021. So this is a playbook that, that has been done in other states. So I was following this fake elector stuff in real time back in 2020. I watched them formulate the plan. I watched it unfold. Really, there's two parts to it. The part number one was they were going to make the objections to the electors in key states: Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia. And what was going to happen was they were hoping that state legislatures would then refuse to adopt the slate that was won in the election, saying there was fraud. Then this alternate slate of electors would already be available, or Republican slate with Republican signatures on the documents ready to go. And they were hoping that the state legislatures would reject the results of the election and instead send forth, as part of their certification process, this alternate slate. That was the game plan. It didn't work at the state court level. So when that failed, step two was to take the electors from Wisconsin and Michigan and to try and get these fake elector certificates to Mike Pence. And how they were going to do it was through Ron Johnson. It was Ron Johnson's chief of staff that approached Mike Pence's chief of staff and tried to hand off the envelope with the fake elector signatures to him. Thankfully, Pence's chief of staff, who I think was Mark Short, refused to accept the envelope and said, "I'm not taking that. I'm not touching that. Take it back." And of course, Ron Johnson is denied all knowledge of this and said, "Oh, I didn't know what my chief of staff was doing. I had no knowledge of it."
That's
so
right.
There's so many layers of this. Then finally, and I don't mean to go on too long here, but this is the politics of this. Gretchen Whitmer and Dana Nessel are rising stars in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is thirsty for strong leaders that are going to stand up and enforce the law and be tough. And Gretchen Whitmer and Dana Nessel are showing that big time. Yeah. And I think Gretchen is putting herself in the conversation for president in 2028, or at least VP, and Dana to succeed her as governor of Michigan.
Wow, interesting. As you describe the coup, because that's kind of what this is, it reminds me of the Ocean's 11 movie, where there's this plan. And instead of robbing people, they're trying to get this envelope to the center of government, and there's all these different people involved, and they're kind of being all ninja about it, and eventually it fails. Let me show this video of them knocking on the door trying to hand over these documents, and the police are having none of it.
They're also on the governor's certificate of ascertainment.
I'm not going to get into a political debate. I'm following the order.
Political debate. Okay. It's the official sealed document. The certificate of ascertainment has also the GOP electors. They are here. They're trying to do their constitutional duty.
I understand.
And their constitutional duty requires them to be at the Senate chamber today at 2 p.m. They're here.
All right, they're not. I understand they're not being permitted in. If you have a problem, you can contact the governor's office, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, or
until the governor's press release this morning and said because of COVID. Is that the reason being given?
No.
All right, that was what the press release said. Is there another reason why?
You'd have to ask the governor's office to answer that question. I don't have.
We have a copy of paperwork that was prepared as electors under their constitutional duty. Can I speak to the sergeant?
I mean, it's on video, right? So it's it's not like this is hearsay. These are people trying to change the outcome of the election on video. Republicans. Some of them are very high up in the Republican Party, right?
Business people, lawyers, doctors, all kinds of different professions. They also love to film themselves committing crimes, as we've seen many times.
Yeah.
We've seen the Proud Boys do it. We saw a lot of the January 6th people, are prosecuted from their own cell phone videos.
Right.
That guy, Big O, was one of them who was, filming himself in Nancy Pelosi's office with his feet on the desk. His buddies are filming him. They're having a great time. So, as you can see from that video, that's not a reporter filming that. No. That's one of the fake electors filming themselves.
There's someone filming someone felonies. Filming them. I mean, it's like they've got double the evidence that they're handing over to Jack Smith. Here, take me now. It's just beggars belief that this happened, and it's 2 years since, or more. And 2.5 years, and still, I mean, I appreciate that the prosecutions are now coming, but I don't think that it should have taken this long.
Yeah, I mean, that was my My first thought too, I'm with you here, Anthony. My first thought was like, gosh, why did it take almost 3 years? And then I catch myself and go, you know what? At least somebody's doing something,
Right.
At least Gretchen and Dana stepped up to the plate, and at least somebody's out there prosecuting him. What's going on in Georgia? So at the same, I agree with you. Why is this taking so long? But at the same time, thank God somebody's finally doing it.
And Jack Smith is, whipping into action, isn't he? Trump. Jack Smith's kind of played a great move here, because he effectively wrote to Trump to say he was a target in the special counsel investigation into the overturning of the election, right? And who leaked it? Donald Trump himself.
Always.
Exactly as he did when they did the search of Mar-a-Lago, and he leaked it. It was a quietly done, respectful, warranted search, and he announced that it was a raid on his home, and he announced it. The FBI didn't announce it. And here we are again. So I guess Jack Smith must have realized that Trump, if he received this letter, was probably going to go public with it straight away. And by doing that, it's kind of caught everybody off guard, including Judge Eileen Cannon.
Yeah, I mean, the funny part is MAGA always says, well, Jack Smith is just releasing this because this is happening today, and he's trying to distract from that, when the reality is it's Donald Trump himself that is leaking this stuff on these particular days. So, yeah, I don't know. It's either, number one, he can't keep a secret. We know that. I mean, he can't ever keep his mouth shut about anything. So, and number two, I think he's trying to get in front of it to set the narrative. He's trying to get his supporters whipped up so that when things happen, they're ready to go, and it's not a surprise, I guess.
It's just the victim card, isn't it? Time and time again, the victim card, because he sees it as evidence that his opponents are trying to imprison him. Like Alexei Navalny in Russia, with Putin imprisoning him.
Right.
This is nothing like that. Alexei Navalny never broke the law, right? Putin just put him away to silence him, so he didn't want to have any opposition. Joe Biden has nothing to do with this. He doesn't run the Justice Department. And ultimately, as we've seen from that video, these crimes have been committed, and the trails all lead back to Trump. Let's talk about what Ron DeSantis had to say about this target letter.
Yeah, DeSantis can't figure out how to get out of his own way here. He obviously has had years to prepare for this moment of what he's going to say if Trump is indicted for January 6th. So he's had a chance to carefully craft his response. So he knows this day is coming.
Yeah.
So what does he do? What does he come out with? He comes out with a response that makes everyone mad. It makes the right mad. It makes the left mad.
Yeah.
Literally nobody liked this response, okay, except for people on his payroll, which his response is, well, Trump could have done more to stop January 6th from happening, but at the same time, I don't think he should be prosecuted. So MAGA is mad at him for the first part of the statement, and everyone else is mad at him for the second part. And once again, Ron can't get out of his own way.
Let's take a look.
Shown how he was in the White House and didn't do anything while things were going on. He should have come out more forcefully, of course that. But to try to criminalize that's a different issue entirely. And I think that we want to be in a situation where you don't have one side just constantly trying to put the other side in jail, and that unfortunately is what we're seeing now. So there's again, someone had whispered this to me, so I'm sure I'll have a chance to look at this in the future, depending on the developments. But I would say that's kind of what I was going to do. Okay, well, thank you all. It's great to be here.
Totally unprepared, right?
Yeah, one other thing, by the way, he wiped some more snot off his nose and wiped his pant leg after that. So, I mean, I like to point that out because he does it constantly. He is
disgusting, isn't he?
He really is
look
like
underneath his
a
couch.
disgusting person.
Yeah.
But I mean, the dilemma for Ron is, and I've said this for 2 years now, if he happens to win the nomination, then what? Like, how is he going to hang on to these MAGA voters in November if he defeats Trump? So I think that's why he feels like he has to pay lip service to them here, because he's thinking, well, I need to hang on to them. But no matter what he does, he's not going to hang on to them. If he defeats Trump, they will turn on him. They will never vote for him. They will blame him for Trump going down. He will take the blame. So there's no win here. The only strategy that's viable is for him to walk away from Trump and to denounce Trump and to forcefully go against him like Christie or Asa Hutchinson, but he just simply won't do it.
I've been watching a lot of Chris Christie, and, he is, for all his faults, he's a relatively honorable man. He sees the bigger picture. I just wish Republicans would understand that they would have a much better chance of representation, of decent, honest representation, if they just dumped Trump and went with Christie. Because, I'm not a Democrat. I politically I haven't really made my mind up in as much as I certainly wouldn't vote for Donald Trump. But I recognize that fascism is not healthy for the United States of America. And that's what Trump's offering, and that is not what Chris Christie's offering. And Chris Christie, I think, sees the danger to the whole fabric of democracy in the United States from Donald Trump. And I just wish that more Republicans would recognize that. But, this lot are going to eat each other in the primaries. I mean, it's going to be a real fight, isn't it?
For me, I equate this to like the savings and loan, the banking crisis in the past of like 88 and 2008, and also the inflation problem in 1980, is that sometimes a political party has to endure short-term pain for long-term gain. And you have to be willing to do things to fix the issues that might hurt you in the next election, but are going to help you for a decade after that. That's where the Republican Party is with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The smart thing is for them to purge the party of the nutcases and of Donald Trump, to take their loss in 24, maybe even in 26, but reset the party, recalibrate the party, bring in new voters, and make themselves more attractive to new voters, and cut loose these handful of nut jobs who have taken over the party. But they're not willing to endure that short-term pain. They just won't do it. And I say like savings and loan, because sometimes when you bail out banks and savings and loans, or you do things to rein in inflation, the economy suffers, or you go through a period of pain. But in the long run, it benefits you. And the Republican Party of today simply can't think past the next election.
Do you think, they recognize the importance of having a functioning democracy?
No.
Because, that's the thing that bothers me the most. And that's the thing that, we at MeidasTouch focus on. We are pro-democracy, right? We are not Democrats. We are pro-democracy. It just so happens that the Democrat Party is the only pro-democracy party out of the two. And that's why we're, aligned with the Democrats at the moment. But, I'm completely open to all candidates and to people representing the population properly. And I recognize that Republicans are not represented. Trump does not represent them. He doesn't even like them. He hates these people. And in fact, you posted a video that was really interesting from his rally in Iowa, where he was backstage, right, walking through the crowd with his Secret Service people. And there was a bunch of his supporters kind of in the way. And if this isn't a perfect example of who Trump really is, how much contempt he has for the people that support him and adore him and worship him like a god, then I don't know what is. I'll show the clip and then we'll talk about it. Oh, and I should caveat this with, he doesn't know that he's being filmed.
Right.
I mean, Ron.
Yeah. So I've said for a long time, many people have said that if the MAGA people maybe really knew what Trump really believes, what he really thinks of them. Yeah. And we know he has nothing but contempt for them. He plays the game. He acts like but he won't go. He doesn't go near these people with a 10-foot pole. He doesn't sit down and have lunch with them. He doesn't go out and actually meet the people. He does quick photo ops, very carefully controlled and scripted, but that's it. He has no connection whatsoever to average people. So in this particular situation, there wasn't press there. The person I got that video from is a Trump guy, is a Trump supporter who was walking behind Trump. So there's no cameras there. So yes, he doesn't know he's being filmed, and he's trying to go to a radio interview in Iowa. And I don't know that he was necessarily expecting all of these people to be in the hall there who are trying to, get a selfie with him or whatever. But he stopped. You notice he stopped walking, and he was pointing out to the Secret Service, get them away from
doing this kind of flick thing with his hand, which but like,
get them away.
Like vermin, like get these. I want to show it again. It's only short. I want to show it again. Just watch Trump's first flick and the way he's like shocked at the fact that, oh my God, I've got to come into contact with the great unwashed. Here it is. He really is a disgusting, traitorous coward, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, if he's a man of the people, like they say, like they try to portray him when he goes to these fast food restaurants, why does he stop right there? Why doesn't he just keep walking and shake their hands and do selfies with them? Because he's afraid of them. First of all, he's afraid of these people, and he doesn't like them. He wants their money and he wants their votes, but he doesn't want them getting close to him, So, I mean, you see, this is like a Wizard of Oz moment where the curtain falls and you see Oz behind the curtain. This is really one of those moments that we get very, very rarely. I've gotten them before from people's cell phones at Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster, but they're very rare, but they are snapshots of the real Donald Trump. And so to me, they're very valuable.
Because he's he has a real potty mouth in private, doesn't he? He swears all the time. He's been, people have reported that he's used the N-word multiple times. He really is a kind of disgusting, racist creature. And when he gets up on a podium, obviously he tries to stick to the script, but he kind of hides it and tries to play this kind of puffed up authoritarian. But in reality, he is a very lonely, angry man.
Yeah. He can't relate to these people. I mean, he has nothing in common with them. He doesn't do what they do. He doesn't go to church. He doesn't have the same hobbies and interests that they have.
He has no friends. I mean,
he's had a very insular life and lifestyle. I mean, he doesn't drive a car. So many things. He's never made himself a cup of coffee. He's never been in a grocery store.
Well, he thought that you had to show ID.
Relate to people.
Do you remember? He said if you're going to buy groceries and you have to show your ID, everybody was like, "What?"
He has no idea. No idea. His whole life has been insular and in a bubble.
Let's talk about Ukraine for a moment, because he's been making these appearances on Fox and various places, and he's been touting for months this secret plan that he has to fix the Ukraine war in 24 hours. I know Vladimir and I know Volodymyr, the Vlads and the Vlods, and I know them so well. And of course, he's exposed that knows Volodymyr Zelensky well, or he likes Volodymyr Zelensky because he didn't rat him out over the perfect phone call when he tried to extort him over digging up dirt on Joe Biden. We have a clip. I'll show the clip and then we'll talk about it, because this is just like, if this is his plan, then we've got problems.
You said you could end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours.
Yes, I could.
How would you do that?
I know Zelensky very well. I felt he was very honorable, because when they asked him about the perfect phone call that I made, he said it was indeed perfect. He said he didn't even know what they were talking about. He could have grandstanded, I felt threatened.
Well, that's not going to be enough for Putin to stop bombing Ukraine.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well, even better. And I had a good relationship, very good, with both of them. I would tell Zelensky, no more. You got to make a deal. I would tell Putin, if you don't make a deal, we're going to give him a lot. We're going to give him more than they ever got if we have to.
We're going to give him a lot. I mean, who's he turning into? It's like Marlon Brando's sister.
There's so much here to unpack in that clip.
Take it away, my friend.
One is, first of all, who made a big deal out of that clip? The Ron DeSantis campaign.
Right.
What do you think they made a big deal out of? Not what you would normally think. not what a normal human would make a big deal out of, which is the second part of the clip. What they made a big deal out of is the fact that Donald Trump said that Zelensky was an honorable man. You see, that's what they stuck in MAGA's face, because MAGA hates Zelensky.
Yeah.
Zelensky is a, Jewish Nazi leader of Ukraine. He's a fraud. He's a con man. According to them, he has, multiple million-dollar homes all over the world and private jets that he is secretly, embezzling billions of US dollars.
The guy was a jobbing actor.
That's their view of him.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson's view of him.
Yeah.
And so when he said that was the first time Trump has ever said that Zelensky is an honorable man. That really set off a little firestorm among MAGA and on the right. Like, what did he just say? So they were pretty upset about that part. But, let's take the next part. Why is he an honorable man? Well, Zelensky any leader of Ukraine is in the same position as the prime minister of Israel. In other words, they depend on the United States for their survival. They literally would most likely be extinct without serious U.S. aid, assistance, and support. Same thing, Taiwan. You can go around. And so the leaders of those countries have to be very careful not to take sides in U.S. politics, because they don't know who's going to be the next president. They have to rely on the leaders of both parties, right? And so Zelensky, I think the perfect phone call was not a perfect phone call. And yes, Zelensky could have ratted out Trump back then and said, no, Trump tried to pressure me to investigate the Bidens, but he didn't. And he kind of demurred. He didn't say Trump was innocent by any means. He just said, well, I really didn't think much of the call. There really wasn't much. He sort of had not much to say.
Well, he had more important things to worry about.
He's trying to save his country.
Yeah.
He can't get involved in Adam Schiff and impeachment and all that. He doesn't want to get in the middle of that, because it's not in the interest of his people for him to get involved. So I understand why Zelensky did what he did. I think he could have really hurt Trump had he not, but he's got to protect his own people.
And diplomatically, you don't want to get on the wrong side of the leader of the free world, as he was.
Of course
at the time.
not. Yeah, I mean, he was in a no-win position. Yeah. So for Trump to kind of act like, well, the fact that Zelensky didn't rat me out proves I'm innocent, it's so disingenuous, it's ridiculous. He knows it, but MAGA's dumb enough to think, oh yeah, that's a good point. Which is utterly ridiculous. And then the last part of it was what? Oh, that was the other part that really upset MAGA and probably upset Tucker Carlson, a bunch of others, which he said that he would threaten Putin to give more U.S. aid to Ukraine than even Biden was giving. And that's how he would get Zelensky, get Putin to stop the invasion. Number one, he would never say that to Putin. And number two, that set off a fire, because, MAGA wants no U.S. aid. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Boebert, all of them, they want to cut off all aid to Ukraine. And here's Trump saying he would promise more aid than Biden is giving. Yeah. That whole clip, which is only about 30 seconds, is just ridiculous on so many levels.
My greatest concern is that, MAGA Republicans are on Putin's side now. It was just a few people. Do you remember a few months ago there would be a few people, and you'd be like, "Oh, I'm not sure. It sounds like they're on Putin." They're all on Putin's side now. They've all pretty much decided that Putin is the good guy and Zelensky is the bad guy. And this is also very dangerous because we had Marjorie Taylor Greene last week trying to propose an amendment to remove the U.S. from NATO. Again, destabilizing or seeking, obviously it would never get through and it would never pass the Senate, but it just, even talking about it is destabilizing for the U.S. on the world stage.
Yeah, and that, Putin's ultimate dream, he said this 20 years ago, is to break up NATO. Yeah. If there's two things that he wants to accomplish foreign policy wise, it's number one, to separate the United States from NATO and to have NATO dissolve. And number two, to bring the Eastern European countries back within Russia's orbit and control, which he's accomplished with Belarus, trying to accomplish in Ukraine and other places. like Georgia, some of the Baltic countries. Those are his two foreign policy dreams, and he wanted Donald Trump to accomplish the first part of that, which is to separate the U.S. from NATO.
But I guarantee he did that at Helsinki. You
Yeah.
know, at that summit when
Yeah.
he went into the private room and there was only an interpreter there and Trump wouldn't allow any officials in. What else is Vladimir Putin going to communicate to Trump in those short minutes, however long they were together, is just bashing NATO and probably saying something along the lines of, you know, if you were the strong man you claim to be, then you would take America on its own and get away from the NATO alliance.
I believe that the plan was that they had together
Yeah.
was to pull the U.S. out of NATO in Trump's second term. I think what Trump told Putin was, I can't do it in my first term and win re-election. I can do it in my second term. And I really believe that the plan was for Trump to complain all throughout his first term about NATO.
Yeah.
Constantly
Yeah.
about how there's no need for it anymore. They're not supporting, they're not paying their fair share of the military upkeep, all of that stuff, lay the groundwork. Then Putin invades Ukraine in Trump's second term. Trump refuses to come to their aid or give assistance, and that ultimately causes the breakup of NATO. I believe that was the plan all along.
And Trump lies about NATO all the time, doesn't he? He kind of can't quite, you know, talking about the fact they're not paying their fair share, but he doesn't understand that it's, you know, it's based on the country's GDP and therefore what they can afford to pay. And America is one of the richest countries in the world. Of course it pays more, has the largest military in the world. Of course it has to have more responsibility. I mean, it's just obvious. And yet he, you know, rewrites the narrative in such a way that MAGA Republicans will be like, yeah, if they're not paying their way, then of course they should. But, you know, what does he want? He wants tiny countries to pay the same as the U.S.
He's a transactional person. He's looking at global security as a business deal, you know. But I think that that's all an excuse. But really, the complaint is against Germany. I mean, really, the other NATO countries do what they're supposed to do, especially UK. It's not really an issue with any country except for Germany. Germany's always spent less than they're supposed to on defense. Based on their GDP, their population, all that, they clearly can do more. And I think that some leaders in Germany acknowledge that. So, I mean, that's probably where the complaint is, but that's not a reason to break up or dissolve an alliance that's kept the world safe for 75 years.
And Germany also, you know, Germany has a historical issue, obviously.
That's right.
Because it was formerly, you know, full of Nazis, and they were the aggressor in the Second World War. So, I mean,
it's the same in Japan.
Right.
You know,
And
Japan can do more in Asia militarily, but for the same reason.
And Germany actually does a whole lot in other ways that Trump probably doesn't even know about. You know, they're a very generous country in terms of the way that they welcome immigrants because of their geography, where they're located. A lot of people come to Germany. And, you know, to all intents and purposes, they are now a very powerful, functioning democracy, and they make great cars. So, you know, who are we to complain? Let's talk about Charlie Kirk for just a moment. Just explain who Charlie Kirk is, because not everyone is going to know him. He really is. He really is the kind of. I was going to say he's like the ultimate nemesis, isn't he? He really is that one of the darkest characters in the MAGA movement.
The Republican Party has for decades had a problem with young voters. I mean, attracting young voters. Part of that is the fact that, you know, colleges tend to be very liberal places, liberal professors. So a lot of college students generally tend to become liberal when they're students. And also their platform doesn't really do a whole lot. Their policies don't really do a whole lot for young people. So there's a number of reasons why they've always struggled with the youth vote. And right now, the Gen Z vote is a pretty big block of voters. And as the baby boomers are dying off, which is a huge voting block, that's right now voting a lot for Republicans. When they die off, I mean, it's going to be these younger voters that are going to step in. And right now, they are trending very strongly Democrat, even into their mid-20s. So 12, 14 years ago, they came up with the ridiculous idea of that Charlie Kirk was the person that was the best guy for them to start the youth outreach and to attract the youth vote. They put the worst possible guy in charge of it. And so he started this organization, Turning Point USA, that basically goes around to college campuses. They form clubs on each college campus, and they're battling the liberal professors and trying to register students as Republicans. And it's been a disaster. And he siphons off so much money from the party that could be going to people who could actually produce results.
He's made millions, this guy.
They
created a monster.
He's made a lot of money. He's uneducated. He never went to college. He had a sugar daddy when he was very young. When he was like 19 or 20, he became friends with this really old, like 80-year-old guy, super rich guy who financed his operation and just wrote him big checks. And, you know, this guy's been nothing but a failure. Every election he gets involved with, they lose. You know, his outreach efforts are a disaster, but he's still out there doing his thing.
And he sells a lot of tickets to his road shows. I'll show the clip of people who tried to get in, but he oversells, doesn't he? This is something you've experienced personally.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, this is really interesting because this is not just Charlie Kirk. This is Trump. This is a Republican thing, which I've known for a little while now, which is if they pay no attention to like seating capacity at arenas or events or the fire code, that's irrelevant to them. Yeah. So if they're going to do an event at arena that fits 500 people, they'll sign up 1,000. You know, they'll sign up. They'll sell 1,500 tickets. They're going to sell tickets and take money from whoever is willing to give it. And what they do is, and I've been to Trump rallies where I've been stuck outside. I've been to like Marjorie Greene, Matt Gates's thing where I got stuck outside and Gates apologized to me that I couldn't get into his rally. But this is what they do because they just want your money. You know, they want your name on a voting list. And even when they're not selling tickets, they're still getting your email and your address and stuff to send you solicitations. So that's what they do. They just, but I can tell you most of the time, Anthony, because I've tried to get fights started at these things. Like when I got stuck outside of Marjorie Greene's rally and a bunch of us couldn't get in, there's like 300 or 400. I'm trying to incite them. I'm trying to go like, hey, this isn't right, guys. You know, this is terrible. We sat in this line for throughout 2 hours and we can't get in. And they would never take the bait. You know, people would just grumble and gripe, but they would never say anything. And that always perplexed me. Like, why aren't these people more mad?
Well, because they're in the cult. They're in the cult. You're not in the cult. You see, once you're brainwashed, you can't.
I've seen so many Trump rallies where thousands of people can't get in. Yeah. They're stuck outside and it's not the Trump people who won't let them in. It's the fire marshals. It's the event. The people who control the building say no more is coming in.
So. Let me show the clip of these people who are not very happy about it.
The money, the video, the power, the power, spies from the enemy. And if those odds weren't bad enough, they were well trained, well equipped, well armed.
Charlie out here now. They told us to come over here to get it. Charlie said, come out here and tell us how we can. Yeah, we want Charlie Kirk to come out here and tell us that after standing online for 4 hours in 115-degree sweltering garage, to be told when we finally get to the front that we can't come in. We can't see, there's a wall up, and we can't come in. And all the hundreds of people are back here who came from all over the country, and they won't let us in.
Do they say why?
No.
But this is outrageous. I just spent $1,000 on my airline ticket to fly here from New York City.
They claim there's no more seats.
I'm staying in a hotel, and I can't get in. I waited for...
She spent $1,000 on tickets to come from New York City, and then they waited in line for 4 hours in over 100-degree heat.
They did.
The cult is so powerful.
I showed a clip of them in the parking garage in line 4 hours before. They were not lying, and it was like 95. And look, this was an event that was hyped for months in Florida. People did fly from all over because they had all the presidential candidates, except, by the way, Ron DeSantis was the only one who skipped it. So this was hype. People flew in, they got hotel rooms and everything, and they couldn't get in. And so I think they just finally snapped. You know, they finally snapped. I don't think they would have said this if it had been Trump and not Charlie Kirk. But I think, you know, it's easier for them to vent on Charlie.
They feel like they know him, don't they? They were saying, you know, get Charlie out here.
Get Charlie.
And that's really the whole thing about this cult that I'm learning, is that they project a friendship, like Trump is their friend and Charlie is their friend, and nothing could be further from the truth. And in fact, I want to quote something that Charlie Kirk said, because he is a racist. He is a white supremacist. He is one of the, you know, the worst kind of MAGA Republicans. And this is something at that rally that he said on stage. I don't have a video of it, but I just want to quote it. He said, 3 weeks ago, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist, Kirk said, right? But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. The far-right commentator continued. They're coming out and saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You don't have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. He added, you had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. I think he said this on his talk show, right? I mean, this was obviously after the affirmative action bill was, thrown out by the Supreme Court. I mean, this kind of blatant racism is celebrated amongst his supporters.
And what do we know about Charlie Kirk? He didn't go to college. He didn't do anything. He didn't join the military. He didn't accomplish things independently. He had a rich white dude write him a big fat check to start a business. Now, there's a lot of people who could do very well in life if they had someone that took care of their needs when they were 20 years old, like Charlie Kirk had that guy do.
And Donald Trump with his dad.
Yeah, and Donald Trump. And yet they're the first ones to complain about people who did work their way up from nothing and overcome obstacles and try and use their race as a weapon against them. Yeah, it's horrible. It's disgusting. Charlie is one of the worst of the worst. And you can see, how is that guy going to attract Gen Z voters for the Republican Party? But that's their guy. That's their guy who's supposed to win over Gen Z. And I say, great. I love it. I'm glad that the Republican Party thinks that Charlie Kirk is their man.
Let's lighten the mood a little bit and talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene appearing in a rap video.
That's lightening the mood? Oh, okay. Well, all right.
I know that when you posted this on your Twitter, you actually apologized to people for posting it. What is it about rappers that want to kind of celebrate MAGA and are singing about it or rapping about it? I mean, let me play it and then we can talk about it, because you couldn't imagine this.
Hold on 1 second.
Go on.
I forgot to do this. I want to give a plug to the woman who shot that last video.
Oh yeah,
a friend of mine, Olia from Ukraine. She just had a baby. I think her baby's 3 or 4 months old. She's from New York City. She flew down there to that rally to cover it. And the reason why she's so great is because those people will not talk to CNN or NBC or CBS like that.
Yeah.
Only someone like Olia can go in there who's totally neutral, nonpartisan, non-political, can get in there and get those people to say those things. So I just want to give her a shout out. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It's important to respect your sources. I get that.
That's right.
Okay, let me show you I'll show this video of Marjorie, and you can have a swig of whiskey while it's playing. Here
okay.
Sexualized and having transgender surgeries. Sexualizing children is what pedophiles do to children.
MTG, MAGA's MVP. MTG, MAGA's MVP. MTG, MAGA's MVP. MTG, MAGA's MVP. Democrats get back. Boom. Reporters even get slapped. They spreading all these rumors because Marjorie be spitting big facts. Deep state and the left always hating. When they gonna let Joe about that basement? Marjorie, I really love what you do. Keep calling Ronald's out. No one does it better than you, huh? A real businesswoman, AOC's a featherweight. A Southern belle, a little hood. Watch her shake and bake. Divorce, that's all y'all gotta bring up. Yeah, watch her drain the swamp because she know they corrupt. She's fighting for our children. She's fighting for our freedom. She's fighting for the Jan 6. She's fighting good versus evil. MTG, MAGA's MVP. MTG, MAGA's MVP.
I had to stop it. I can't play any more of that. It's doing my nut. What in Lord's name is going on here?
this is pretty interesting, actually, to be honest with you, because I mean, I can tell you, I was active in the Republican Party, club president, all that for 30 years, right? So I know from going to all these Republican meetings, generally what you're seeing is old people, white people, right? At Republican clubs and Republican rallies and meetings, right? So when Donald Trump wins the nomination in 2016, I check out of all that. And I stopped going to all those things, because I didn't want to hear anything about Trump. So for basically 4 years, I didn't go to any meeting. Then I go back to my first one in 2020 during the election. I went to a rally, which was Michael Flynn was hosting it, Roger Stone and all them in this area, because I wanted to see what was going on. And it meant my first time attending a Republican event in 4 years. And who was the opening warm-up act? Forgazio Blow, the rapper right there. What came out, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking, it's still all old white people. So it's the same crew, except I see some Proud Boys, over there guarding Roger Stone. Okay, that's a little different from what I'm used to. I'm not used to, a dozen Proud Boys surrounding Roger Stone. But then this Forgazio guy gets up there and starts this rap, and I'm like stunned, because I could never imagine, like, under George Bush, or Ronald Reagan, a guy like this being his warm-up act, before his speech. So I'm just watching all these old white people, because I'm thinking, like, what do these people think? And a lot of them are like, they kind of don't know what to make of it. They're like, well, I guess we're supposed to like this, but I'm not sure. So I think that for a while there's like this little flirtation with like the thug life element of MAGA. But I think that also most of them are saying, like, well, wait a minute, this is a bridge too far. This isn't us. So I think Marge has really made a mistake by doing this. I think she thought that he's maybe more popular than he is among the MAGA base. He has a little bit of a following, but it's not as broad as what they think.
I mean, this is the thing about there being no strategy, like just throw as much shit at the wall as possible and see what sticks, right?
It's about making money too.
Right. There's always a kind of transaction involved in all of this stuff. Okay, let's talk about Ted Cruz. He hasn't seen the Barbie movie, but he's not happy about it. He is siding with the Vietnamese government, which has banned the release of Barbie. Because of a map that's shown briefly in the film that they say depicts a disputed dash line used by China to claim the South China Sea. I think it was Vietnam's state-run newspaper called it an offending image. Cruz calls it Chinese communist propaganda. Let's see the clip.
Now, I'm the dad of 2 young daughters. This is, going to be a big movie, particularly for a lot of young girls. There's a scene in Barbie where there is this map of the world, and it's drawn like with crayon. I mean, it's really a very simple cartoon. And so they have this blockish thing that is called Asia. And then they've drawn what are called the 9 dashes, this is Chinese communist propaganda, which the Chinese are asserting sovereignty over the entirety of the South China Sea. And they don't have any right to it under international law, but they're trying to take it away from their neighbors there, take away and claim China's in charge of the entire sea and no one else, whether Vietnam or Singapore or other nations in that area, they don't have any rights to.
I mean, what's he even talking about? It's just a movie, for goodness sake. I mean, I just don't get it with that guy. I presume it's just like publicity. He's like, oh, I haven't been on TV recently, so I'll just say something ridiculous and hopefully I'll get some coverage.
These guys like Ted and like Jesse Waters, there are a few that are just notorious, who are constantly trolling pop culture, movies, products, music videos, the Super Bowl halftime show, commercials, constantly trolling pop culture, looking for traction because there's crossover appeal. They understand that if they can start a controversy with Taylor Swift or with the Barbie movie or with Legos or, Mr. Potato Head, they know that's going to get them on Fox News and get them some headlines and get them some attention. And so, yeah, Ted Cruz, he's been out of the news for a few months. He hasn't been able to get any notice. His podcast is probably the most important thing in his life. He loves that podcast more than he loves being in the Senate.
Yeah.
And he makes a lot of money off that podcast, by the way. He just signed a big contract, so he's always looking to promote that podcast. And so this is just him trying to find some way of stirring up controversy, because he knows, look, the Barbie movie is the big blockbuster movie of the summer for families, besides Oppenheimer, which is more of an adult movie. But this is the big pop culture. So he's just trying to find some way to pick a fight with the Barbie movie. And some of the right wingers have, I guess there's like a trans character or something in Barbie that they've latched onto. And Ted decides to latch onto the South China Sea, as if some 13-year-old girl is going to watch the Barbie movie and go, you know what? I no longer recognize Taiwan's sovereignty because of this map in Barbie.
But it's also the idea that Republicans constantly pushing this notion that they are protecting young people by removing any material that is going to, in some way, kind of indoctrinate them. And what that effectively is doing is it's removing exposure to anything that is going to make them think or to question or to even just to learn. We are sponges. We need, this is why people go to university, is to debate and to analyze and to really test themselves. And this idea that removing all books from shelves, and because, if anybody is stupid enough to think that a book about homosexuality is going to make you gay, or coming into contact with a drag queen is going to turn you into a drag queen, I mean, it is just nonsense. And yet they've made an entire kind of political movement is built upon this garbage.
And another big thing is the race of actors. When they have a person of color portray a cartoon character or a superhero or a historical character like, I don't know, Marie Antoinette, take anybody.
Yeah.
If you have an actress who's maybe half black and half white play that role, they get all upset about that too. That's another big thing. So for people who say, we should never talk about race and we should be a colorblind society, they talk about it constantly.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're so offended by like a black mermaid, but it really tends to bother them.
Yeah. Because, to not be racist is to actually talk about race all the time, is to see people's color, is to see people's culture and to engage with it, not to ignore it. To ignore it and to do that kind of, that line, I don't see color. That's racist. See everything. Engage with it. It's part of our humanity. It's so frustrating, isn't it? Because it's like these things are dressed up, or they dress these things up as wokeness. And it's like, I'm so proud of my wokeness and being awake. Because all of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s, we have had to make some adjustments ourselves because of the way culture was back then. And, I was lucky, I went to a very multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-race school as a kid because I grew up in London, which is a kind of very mixed society. But for people who grow up in predominantly kind of white Republican areas, they are going to have to work a little bit harder, in the same way that black people have to work a whole lot harder to not get shot by the police when they get pulled over.
You hear the term from them oftentimes, like real Americans. Real Americans think
so offensive.
Real and that's what they're talking about. They're talking about
White
people
Americans.
in rural, white, small towns as being real America, and people in places like London or New York or Philadelphia or LA, multicultural. That's not real America.
Finally, let's talk about Donald Trump's infamous golf game, because as we know, he is one of the greatest golfers in the world, second only to Tiger Woods. Wasn't it his former golf buddy that said that he cheats at golf? He said, he was interviewed, that's right, and he said, of course he's going to cheat at the election. He cheats at golf, cheats at everything. Who filmed this clip of Trump taking a golf swing at one of his golf clubs and screwing it up so badly?
Yeah, it was just a golf guy. I got it off a golf website.
Right.
A guy had posted it. He was just a golfer on the course who filmed it, and it was a little bit longer, but most of it was him, taking practice swings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Basically the guy was like, "Hey, there's Trump. Let's film him." And so they were kind of like snickering, and and then he shanked it, and they just started laughing. And so I'm obsessed with Trump's golf game for a lot of reasons.
Right.
Number one, he can't wear his makeup out there, so we get him like in his natural look. And you see the pasty face. His girdle doesn't really work out there either, his lift shoes. So you kind of see him more in his natural element and his natural look, except for the hat, covering up his hair. But, the cheating at Rick Riley is the one who wrote the book about Trump cheating at golf.
Right.
He was a Sports Illustrated reporter, legendary reporter.
That's right. I remember now.
Yeah. And it really does tell you so much about somebody. If you're a golfer, it's all about honor system, enforcing the rules against yourself, calling penalty. It's like the only sport where you call penalty on yourself and cost yourself millions of dollars, which has happened many times. Many times a pro golfer will have an infraction that no one sees, and they'll report themselves and disqualify themselves.
Trump is not doing that, is he? Not in a million years.
Trump somehow wins the club championship at his courses every year. He's the club champion. Somehow he supposedly has had 7 holes in one. He's supposedly like a 3 handicap. So yeah, it's just I like to post stuff like that to just show like that's all a lie, like everything else. It's all fraud.
Here comes the magic moment.
Oh, he shanked it. Oh my God, I got that on video.
So, oh my God, I got that on video. Shall I show it again? It was very short, and
I'll say this too. Like, there are some clips like that MAGA really gets mad at me about. This was one of them. They were not happy about this clip. I got a lot of blowback over this one.
He should have played a better game. Here it is.
Oh, he shanked it. Oh my God, I got that on video.
Oh my God, I got that on video. I love how he had to pan right over to the right in order to get where the ball had gone.
Went straight to the right.
Yeah. I mean, that was just something to kind of as an amusing aside, and I don't like to laugh too much at Trump because, the problem with these light moments, because he is a clown, right? So therefore we laugh at him. And I wish the media laughed him off the screen, back in 2016. I mean, that's what they should have done. And that's what I'm starting to do in a lot of videos that I'm making now is I'm trying to just ridicule him because he is ridiculous. And yet he's been normalized and he is, he's been respected by the media, actually taking what he says as read instead of going, what is he talking about? And so that's what I'm trying to do at the moment because I recognize that that's probably the best way to communicate to MAGA people that we're not dealing with a man who has any intelligence, any capabilities. He really is a moron. And it was a fluke that he got elected thanks to Russia and, goodness knows what else went on. The security services have written about it time and time again. People just still seem to think that he's popular and he's never won anything.
There were a lot of Democrats that didn't vote for Hillary too. I mean, they stayed home and in some key spots.
Yeah, and James Comey didn't help either.
That was part of it too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyone who's ever studied autocrats throughout history, whether it's Pinochet, Mussolini, Hitler, you could go down the line all over the world, Pol Pot, whoever. There's a common thread. They cannot stand being ridiculed. They can never allow themselves to be the butt of a joke. Putin too. You crack a joke about some of these people, you could go to prison for making fun of them. They can't stand being made fun of or the butt of a joke. And that's why things like this, you say they're comical, but they're also important. They touch a nerve because when the autocrat becomes the clown, becomes the butt of jokes and derision, that's when he loses his aura, his magic power over his followers.
It very much is the Wizard of Oz, isn't it? And, he needs everybody to be on side, playing along for the confidence trick to be convincing. And the moment there are cracks in that armor, then the truth kind of comes through. Just before we finish, I want to pick up on something that happened when we spoke 2 weeks ago, and you and I have spoken about it since, because we had a lot of comments about the fact that we were talking about the far right, and you mentioned the far left, and I said there wasn't a far left. and so I know you've been on vacation for a couple of weeks, so you probably tried not to think about it while you were relaxing, and you do look refreshed.
Thank you.
But it's important that we recognize that a lot of the comments referenced this. And you and I have spoken since, and I think what's important to mention, and I'm sure you would agree, is that the far right presents itself in the leadership of the Republican Party, in Donald Trump, in Kevin McCarthy, Marjorie Taylor Greene, all the leading lights, and some of them extreme, the Paul Gosards of this world. They really are like disgusting, extremist white supremacists. But the far left, as you described it, I said, I am not aware of that being in the Democratic Party, and I maintain that because the leadership of the Democrats are pro-democracy. Obviously, they want women to have the right to choose. I mean, these are not extreme positions.
Yeah,
and as far as I'm aware, there isn't an extreme left in politics. There might be some fringe activists or social media people. But so I'll just give you the chance to respond to that finally before we say goodbye.
Yeah, when I'm not trying to both sides things at all, because I think that the far right is 1,000 times more dangerous than the far left. It's not even a question. And that's one of the reasons why I switched parties. And I agree with you. The far left, when I'm referencing them, I'm generally talking about a small number of activists who, do things like throw paint at paintings in famous museums or glue themselves to the middle of the road to protest climate change. A handful of activists who do some wild stuff. Yes. And the difference is those people aren't in control of the Democratic Party. Those people aren't in control of legislatures. The far right are senators. In the Republican Party, they're governors, they're presidents, they control the party. And so that's what makes it so much more dangerous and why I switched parties is the far right hijacked and took over the party. I don't think they're necessarily a majority, but they're a solid plurality of maybe like 40%. And that's the difference between the two parties. The far left might be 5% of the Democratic Party, but the far right is 40% of the Republican Party. So I guess that's sort of sometimes when we have quick discussions, we don't flesh it out very well, but that's really what I meant.
Yeah, maybe in the future we'll do a deeper and longer discussion about it. But I would say, I'm actually with the people that glue themselves to the tarmac, right?
That's good.
And I don't consider myself far left. And if you think back, do you remember in the 80s when everyone was wearing fur coats? Not everyone, I'm sure you didn't have one.
The
but
PETA
I think
people.
My grandmother was probably sporting one. And, the people used to throw paint at these fur stores and these fur manufacturers. And what did it do? It made the law got changed, and culturally it changed as well. It certainly got banned in the UK. I don't know what happened here. But people stopped wearing fur, and now there's a thriving fake fur industry where no animals are being harmed. Surely that's a good thing.
Yeah, in a way, you make a good point. Troublemakers change the world, right? They really do. It's just for me, like I'm so big on like civility and politeness and all of that things like protesting at people's houses, always rub me the wrong way. And I get pushback from liberals on that when I complain about.
But in the street, not at people's houses. That stuff about the Supreme Court justices, those people were protesting on a public highway. They weren't standing on his land or knocking on his door. They were protesting in the street on a public street. And yet the right-wing media made it look like that Democrats were banging on the door and causing all this trouble, and it's like they weren't. This is the right to protest. This is democracy in action.
And it's just what scares me is about those kind of things is that I study the right, monitor the right, and I know that the right uses things like that as their pretext to do worse things and their excuse. And so that's what always worries me as I look at things like that and go, is that really going to accomplish anything? And how is the right going to weaponize it? So I do look at it from a different angle, but I agree, people like, the the civil rights people in the 60s, blockaded roads. They did all kinds of stuff, but their cause was just, and what they did worked.
Okay. I'm pleased that we got a chance to address that, Ron. I'm pleased to have you back as well. You certainly look rested and well, and I look forward to chatting again next week. Have you signed up for Threads yet? Are you doing Threads, or are you sticking with Twitter?
So many people have asked me about that. So I'm looking at it, thinking about it. I'm very judicious about spreading myself too thin and stuff like that. But yeah, I expect I'll be doing other things. Obviously, I don't love Elon Musk, so always looking for other alternatives.
Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't love you either.
No.
Okay, well, find Ron Filipkowski on Twitter. I'm on Twitter and on Threads, the Anthony Davis. You can catch me every day on the 5 Minute News podcast, and on Sunday hosting the Weekend Show. We'll come back next Wednesday at the same time for another episode of MAGA Uncovered. Have yourself a great week.